Hi everyone, I'm Kaelem, and welcome back to Profiles in Canada. Today, we recognize the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, Orange Shirt Day, in Canada honoring the children who never returned home and survivors of Indian residential and day schools, and more broadly considering the steps that Canada must take along its path to reconciliation with First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Today, we welcome a key player in Canada's national reconciliation process, Senator Brian Francis of Epikwit, Prince Edward Island, who in 2021 sponsored the creation of the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. Before becoming a senator in 2018, Senator Francis was chief of Epikwit First Nation and focused on improving educational and employment opportunities on reserves. Senator Francis is trained as a social worker, a carpenter, and has held various roles in different departments of government, including fisheries and veterans affairs. Senator Francis attended the Lennox Island Indian Day School between grades 1 and 8, and Senator Francis was also a scout. Senator, it is an honor to speak with you today. Thank you so very much for making the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
So, Senator, I want to start by discussing the day that we're commemorating today, Orange Shirt Day. This is a day, of course, that you helped to create in the Senate. I wonder if you might discuss the origins of Orange Shirt Day and what it means to you.
Well, Orange Shirt Day, as we know, takes place on September 30th of each year, and I was honored to sponsor that bill when it came to the Senate. And it's a day to reflect on our Indigenous people, what we've been through, how we move forward in terms of true, meaningful reconciliation. It's a complicated piece when you look at our Indigenous peoples in Canada, because Canada was built on First Nations
Mm.
land, and the land was taken, and so on. So we have all that colonization and the residential school era, Indian day school era. So it's about moving on with Canada as a possibility to be the greatest country in the world by forging that relationship with our Indigenous peoples and moving forward together as Indigenous and non-Indigenous allies, to move forward as one great country. The National Day for Truth and Reconciliation is a symbol of what has happened to our people in the past, the ongoing harms, the genocide and colonization and all that, and how we educate ourselves to move forward in the spirit of true and meaningful reconciliation, not just one day a year, but all throughout the year.
I want to talk about education just briefly because oftentimes when we look at the past of Canada, we see references to words that today we don't use anymore. And a good example of that is the word Indian.
Mhm.
Obviously, it was called Indian day schools, Indian residential schools, but I wonder if you might discuss for our audience, our young audience, what that word actually means, and what it was used for back then.
Well, as you had basically mentioned, it's a very derogatory term,
Mm,
but sometimes when you're in those situations, it becomes the norm.
mm,
For us as children, Indian day school was Indian day school. And got other terms like the Indian Act, and those are all terms that were the colonizers used to kind of you know rule us and keep us from moving forward too much as a people. I went to Indian day school for 8 years, and for me, it was a very difficult time.
mm,
I was taught by those that I felt were there just because they didn't have jobs anywhere else, and they were put in our school to supposedly teach us. But it was very difficult and tough to get a true education out of it. And when you're behind the eight ball and you don't get a proper education early in life, you spend a lot of your life trying to get caught up. And that was
mm.
what I had to do. But I always looked on the positive side to try and see what I could learn as I moved along. So I tried to put a positive spin on it. But the actual journey through the school was not a very pleasant one.
You mentioned, well, obviously, the educational discrepancy that existed as a result of these institutions was significant. But when you were chief of Epikwit First Nation, it was a priority of you to improve those educational opportunities. I wonder if you might quickly discuss why that was important for you, why that was meaning for you as someone who suffered as a result of that Indian day school system to be able to try and rectify those wrongs as chief of your nation?
Mhm. Well, when I was chief of my nation, I always empowered my people to do the best that they could. I always tried to think outside the box when it comes to education system because it was so structured for some of us that had gone to the Indian day school. When we went to schools outside the community, we virtually got lost in the system, and it was very degrading and humiliating to not be able to keep up with your peers. Found
Mm,
it very difficult. So when I became chief, one of the goals that I wanted to instill in my people was education.
mm,
And I brought the GED, it was called a GED program, General High School Equivalency Program, to the community so that those who could not leave for various reasons, whether they didn't have a driver's license or a car, or they had children to watch, could learn right in the community. And, we had people from probably 18 to 60 years old or more that
wow.
took the time to come to get their high school equivalency. And some went on to take training at Holland College, it was in Charlottetown. So to me, that was very, very rewarding. And they, in turn, became the role models for their children who were in school. And the parents would tell them, if we can do it at our age, you can do it. But it's all about making them feel comfortable and thinking outside the box. It's easy to say, yeah, there's a rigid structure here and we can't go outside that, or, is find a way to make it work. And that's what I did. And I felt good about, the empowerment that I gave to my people to move forward.
I wonder, obviously, since Scouts Canada is an educational institution, since you yourself are a former Scout, um, I wonder how children today, in such as our Scouts, should honor today's National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, and how can part of our national reconciliation journey be accessible to them?
Mhm. Well, a good friend of mine, former colleague Senator Murray Sinclair, made the
Mm,
comment that education got us into this mess. Education will get us out of this mess. And I really believe that. And, for scouts across Canada, I would say educate yourself. There's so many various ways that you can do it, whether it's online or talk to people, you go to powwows, you go to First Nation communities and get involved in the actual culture. That's how our non-Indigenous allies can educate themselves, and it could be as easy as sitting around a kitchen table with your family and talking about the true history, not the colonial version that was totally inaccurate, but talk about the true history, the residential schools, the Indian day schools, the '60s school, the millennial school, all those and the harms that it did to our people.
mm.
Educate and then become true allies, not one day a year, but 365 days a year, to help us move forward together as a country. Because reconciliation is not an Indigenous problem, it's a Canadian problem at all levels of government and communities and families. And how we will move through this is how we react and educate ourselves. And I always said it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So there's no, hitting the button that says, well, we did this, so now it's all good and we're good to move on. Has to be a continual education process, as I mentioned, various levels, so that we all move forward. And I know we can do it. I've seen the change from the time I was appointed to the Senate to now in reconciliation. But if we don't keep moving, if we stop, then we lose all that momentum that we had, and we start all over again, and maybe we'll never get it. So it's important that we keep moving, and we need every scout across Canada to take it up and help us out.
Many of our scouters are also wondering how they can help their young people in their groups access educations about the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. But of course, as you mentioned, reconciliation 365 days a year. What advice would you have to scouters who are looking to be mentors, who might want to know more themselves about how they can best educate the next generation in the challenge that, of course, Canada is facing right now?
Mhm. Well, I would say, there are many different ways. Go to the communities, go to the First Nations themselves, maybe have an elder invite, the scouts to a community, do a sweat, whatever the case is, to get right into the actual culture. or
Mm.
invite an elder to talk to the various scouting groups to let them know what their experience has been and the knowledge that they have to pass on to those. So there are many various different ways to do that. We have the National Center for Truth and Reconciliation. That is a really good resource. We have various resources available. It's a matter of just taking a look, and they're there. And like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't have to be complicated.
Mm.
It doesn't. It just you just have to do it. And I always say to people too, there's no wrong way to do this. You know, if you're genuine in what you're doing, there's no wrong way to doing this. It's whatever you feel is the best way, and that will come to you as you move forward.
Well, Senator, as we mentioned, obviously you survived the day school, and despite that, today you represent your province in Canada's Senate and sponsored a day to recognize survivors like yourselves and of course, those who never made it home. You
Yeah.
are in Canada's Senate, but you bring diverse experiences from carpentry to fisheries to being chief, of course, of your home First Nation. Senator, did you ever imagine that you would sit in Canada's Senate when you were just starting out? And I wonder how you found your calling for governance.
Yes, no, I never actually thought that it was a long road to the Senate. It took many twists and turns, but back in the day when I went to the Indian Day School and we were ruled by a person called the Indian Agent, who was non-Indigenous, and he ruled every aspect of our being and told us what to do and when to do it. When I look at that and I look at now being in the Senate and helping to facilitate change at the highest level in Canada, as an Indigenous senator. There's 10 of us in the Senate, and we are making change. And that's a sign that we're moving forward as a country with having Indigenous senators as parliamentarians. I am the proud opportunity to be the first Indigenous senator in Canada to lead a parliamentary or Senate group. I had that opportunity. I just got elected 2 weeks ago to lead my group, the Progressive Senate Group. It's a huge undertaking, but I'm proud when I, look back in the day on Lennox Island to where I am now.
Mhm.
It's good.
Many of our scouts are wondering how they can find what they're most passionate about. And I wonder what advice you might have for them.
I think if you keep looking in a positive way, it will come. I was fortunate through a very rough childhood
Mm.
to find a way to look at the positive side. I knew there was times when I could have went where my other friends went in that other fork in the road, and it wouldn't have worked out very well for me. But
Mm.
I was fortunate to look at role models. I found role models along the way in various stages of my life, and right through being an adult, right through being in the Senate. Always look for those that can really provide that advice and guidance to you in a sincere manner, and look at the positive side.
You mentioned role models. Of course, our scouters serve as role models for the youth in their groups. What advice would you have for role models? How can they set a good example?
I think just by being there for the scouts, being there, listening is a big thing. Listen to what the scouts are saying, and you don't have to say too much sometimes. Listening is, to me, was a very key thing. Even as a chief, I listened more, I think, than I spoke, and people knew that of me.
Hmm.
But listen to people, um, be attentive to their needs, and try to find little ways to help them move forward.
Senator, thank you very much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure to speak with you. And of course, no better day than the day that you sponsored, of course, the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. As a last question, I might, to fit the theme of our series, as someone who serves in Canada's Senate and someone who has led his own First Nation, I wonder what Canada means to you.
Well, Canada, it's a complicated thing, when you look at what Canada means to our Indigenous people, when colonization took place and genocide, dispossession of lands, and putting us onto small First Nations. I grew up in an island off of PEI, 1,250 acres, and the only way you got across was you walked across the ice in the wintertime or you took a
Wow.
boat in the summertime. So it was very, very isolated. So when you look at that and you think, well, that's Canada too, but that doesn't mean that Canada is not a country of possibilities. We know that We can't change the past, but we can learn from the past and we can move forward. And I think Canada can and will do that with our Indigenous people. And that's what the reconciliation journey is all about. It's about moving forward now and making sure that this never happens again. We all have to do it together.
Senator, thank you so much for joining us today, for sharing your wisdom, for sharing your stories on the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. It was a real pleasure to speak with you.
Well, thank you for having me, and it was an honor to participate.
To everybody at home, thanks for joining us. We're going to be back again soon with another great Canadian who uses their talents to the fullest in the service of their country and, of course, of the common good. I look forward to seeing you then. Until next time, cheers. Thanks very much. Thank you, Senator.